Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for an all new episode recap of today's Days of Our Lives, July 4th, 2025. So we start off with Kate and Roman. So Kate is just asking how Roman's been, because he's been tossing and turning in his sleep, and she's worried about him. So he's playing it off, say it's nothing, but she knows her husband. She knows something is going on. She knows that he's still worried about what's going on with Johnny, and he's blaming himself for not coming forward sooner, not doing anything to help him or even telling him what happened between his father and his mother. And she said, like, look, at the end of the day, you didn't provide Johnny with the motive or the intent to shoot his father or be involved in this predicament. Like, you can't blame yourself for that. So he's saying that maybe you shouldn't have incriminated Johnny any further by wiping out the fingerprints off his gun in the first place. So anyways, he said that he will be at the court hearings and he's gonna need Kate's help to run the pub while he's out there. So she said, you can count on me, right? So he appreciates her for just supporting him throughout this thing. So Chanel got on my nerves this whole episode because of her attitude towards her mom, just towards EJ, just her whole attitude. She's been very annoying lately. Abe comes over to check in on her, and she's saying, are you here on my mom's behalf? Because I have not forgiven her for railroading my husband and causing him to be in jail for a crime that he didn't commit. And how could she do this? So again, Abe is coming to her defense and saying, look, like, she has a job to do. Like, somebody's gonna get mad at the end of the day. Like, the public is gonna think that she is being biased because Johnny is her son-in-law. And Chanel doesn't want to hear that. Chanel is saying, like, I don't care about that. Like, how could she do that? Arrest him without questioning him and everything. Like, Abe is saying, maybe the jury will be fair on him, but at the end of the day, like, Paulina is just doing her job. Chanel, again, as thick-headed as she is, she doesn't want to hear that, and she's not forgiving her anytime soon. So, she also is worried about how, EJ and Johnny's relationship might, be reparable, and that, she's worried about his influence over Johnny. But at the end of the day, if they're going to make up, that's on them. You should support them as his wife. You shouldn't have any problem with that because it's affecting you. At the end of the day, like, you gotta put your feelings aside and think about what's best for Johnny. And Johnny, if Johnny wants his father back in his life, let him be. He's a grown adult. He can manage himself. You're just being very ridiculous and very annoying. Paulina comes over there at some point and she doesn't want to hear nothing from Paulina. Paulina said, like, look, this is what it is. Like, I was just doing my job. It was gonna be hard anyways. Even if I was in charge, Johnny would still be brought in for questioning based on the evidence. So she still don't want to hear that, and she's saying, like, you need to come out of my house. So she said, like, at the end of the day, like, I'm the one that bought the house for you and Johnny. So she's like, okay, well, me and Johnny will move. And she's being all irrational. And Abe said, you know what, being the voice of reason, he said, you know what, let's pencil this, let's go, right? Again, Chanel is getting on my last nerve. So earlier, Belle is back on the case. Paulina was there earlier to just, brief her on what she's expected to do. She's surprised that she's back on the case, but again, the judge was the one who signed off on it, and she's just hoping that she will not use her connection to impede her in her prosecuting her own nephew. So she said that she can maintain fairness and unbiasedness, and she also is not going to let EJ turn her into a corrupt DA or anybody else for that matter, because that was also one of Paulina's concern, that her connection to EJ and also Johnny might affect how things play out. So she is, she, at the end of the day, she's doing her job as Paulina is, because Paulina also has a personal stake in it. And at the end of the day, like, they have to do what they have to do. So who cares if Chanel or whoever want to feel a type of way? They are doing their job, and I completely agree with how they're doing it. So at some point, Belle did come back to the office, and she did get a memory chip in the envelope, and it turns out to be, I guess, the memory chip from that device that EJ was, saying that footage was on the night of his shooting. He said that he didn't know where it was, so magically it appeared in our office. So let's see what she does with it. So Johnny comes over to EJ to talk about his case, and they're still trying to figure out, like, what happened that night, because he wasn't the one that pulled the trigger. EJ tells him about how Rachel saw him that night holding the gun. So now she's thinking that maybe he was the one that pulled the trigger, even though he didn't. So now Johnny's understanding why Rachel was acting weird towards him, and that she must be traumatized, and then she would have to be testified against him. She probably is, scared to also do that. So EJ's trying to grapple with his mind, like, who could have done it. He's thinking maybe he's backpedaling to Kristen, but Johnny is saying that, she was brought in for questioning, and it turns out that she wasn't the one who pulled the trigger. It didn't match her gun. So, EJ is saying maybe she could have, stole Roman's gun and use it to shoot him. But, Johnny's saying, I don't believe that. So, now he's just trying to think how he's going to work his way around so that Johnny does not go to jail for something he didn't commit. So Johnny understands, and Johnny trusts that he will do the best job to make sure that that doesn't happen. He also talks about Chanel, and hopefully that Chanel will come around because she has a lot of animosity towards him. So Johnny said, you have to just give her time. She's just trying to protect me as you are. At the end of the day, she will come around. So he's like, I hope so. So anyways, he leaves, and he's thinking maybe he has to talk to Kristen further about how this is going to go down with Rachel. So Brady and Kristen are there trying to figure out how they're going to allow their little girl to testify against Johnny, and how is she going to be affected mentally regarding the outcomes of this thing. So Marlena comes in, and Marlena overhears them, and Brady said, you're the perfect person to talk to. What kind of advice you can give us to help Rachel with this testifying thing? So she's saying all you have to do is just keep it simple and just ensure that she just tells the truth. So Kristen's being snarky. Kristen is saying, like, if she goes ahead and tell the truth, like, we all know that Johnny is already guilty for pulling the trigger. He's the one that had a lot of motive based on, why he wants his father dead. So Marlena got ticked off by that because she said he's innocent. So, Kristen finds that hard to believe, and Brady's trying to convince her that it's true. She doesn't believe, and then she said, it was just like Will, like, Will, we would say Will doesn't have it in him, but years ago Will actually shot EJ. Who's to tell if Johnny and Will don't have it in them? So Marlene said that's enough, like, I need some air. So Brady apologizes, and Marlena said, she has to go. She cannot stand another second with her. So Brady's like, is that necessary? Did you have to do that in front of Marlena? So she's like, you guys can talk all you want, but I do not believe that Johnny is innocent, and now our little girl has to testify, and who's to tell what EJ might do to her, if his son go to jail. So Brady is trying to be optimistic, and Kristen's just worried about her little girl, and she just needs his support throughout this. So he's suggesting that she stays over at his place for a longer period of time because of what's going on, and then with EJ. So she agrees to that. So she says on one condition that she will visit her as often as she can, and he's saying, as long as you stay away from Marlena has a lot going on, and she doesn't need to be in contact with you at this point. So she understands that. So speaking of Marlena is in the square. She sees Belle, and Belle is like, you want to join me for some coffee? So she said, no, that's fine. She's talking about her running with Kristen and how Kristen made her uncomfortable, and they're talking about the case. She believes that Johnny is not innocent. So Belle said that she's unrecused now, she can't really talk about it, and she mentioned something referred to EJ as her boyfriend. So Marlena is like, boyfriend, when did this change? So she said, remember I spoke to you about giving into my feelings and not being conflicted, and you said to go forward with whatever I want to do or who I want to be with. So I chose to be with EJ, and we're in a relationship now. So she said, how is this going to play out if you're the one that's going to send his son to jail? How are you going to really feel, or how is he going to feel? So she said, like, well, I guess we might not be boyfriend and girlfriend no more. That's what it is. So at some point Marlena goes home to Brady, and Brady apologizes for what Kristen said, and she said, like, I just can't be around that woman, and I don't like how she makes me feel. So Brady also invited her to the 4th of July parade with Tate and Rachel, that they would like to see her there. So she said, yes, that would do a great good for all of us, right? So Kristen comes home, and EJ wants to talk to her and say, look, I need you to actually coach Rachel on what to say, so that it goes all well for my son. She's like, are you serious? So he's like, you owe me after what I did for your mom and keeping her safe. Like, do not let me go back on that deal. Like, you need to quote Rachel on what she has to say. So she's saying, is it a threat? So he's like, no, it's just a strong recommendation, right? So EJ at this point, like, look, he's gonna do whatever he has to do to protect his son and make sure his son stay out of jail, right? So Stephanie and Alex, they're just making preparations for 4th of July. They want to do a picnic, something like that. So Stephanie also tells Alex that she might do PR work for EJ for the hospital. And he's like, are you sure about that, given that, he tortured you and whatever? So she said, I despise that man, but at the end of the day, I'm doing it for my mom. I'm doing it for the hospital. So I'm going to have a meeting with him next week. So I will definitely make up my mind by then. So anyways, he's saying maybe you need to give up the PR job and just go into the being an author, going through with the novel. So she said she can't really give up the PR job, but she definitely is interested to be a writer, and he's very convincing of that. So they go out to the pub and they talk to Kate about the job and everything. And Kate says she can't take that on because she's supporting her husband and she's running the pub. She doesn't think she can go into the publishing thing. So Alex is pleading with her that you have the experience. We need you over here because the company definitely needs some kind of positive growth at this point. Your son needs your help to keep his company. So all of that as well. So Stephanie also said, I need your suggestion in the novel and also to make sure that it goes forward. So finally, Kate finds out who was the actual author behind the novel. So again, she didn't mean for that to come out. So she's embarrassed about, it being found out that it was her. So at some point, Kate said, yes, I'm going to take the offer. Roman come over, ask what's going on. So she said that she's actually going to take up the job for Titan, right? So let's see how that goes out. So Johnny comes home to Chanel, and Chanel is upset because she just talked to her mom and she doesn't forgive her for what she did to Johnny. And Johnny said, I'm sorry, I'm getting in the way between you and your mom. She said it's not your fault, it's her fault for you being in that predicament. So she asked about how it went with his father. So he said it went really well. He's confident that we're gonna get through this case and everything. So she's like, how are you guys personally? So he said, personally, we're on the mends to repair a relationship. So she said, so you can tell that it's upsetting her. So she said, yeah, I really don't like that you guys are getting close. I do not like his pull on you, his influence. So she said, I hope you don't forget all the evil things that he has done. So he said, I could never forget that, but you just have to just get along with us and making sure that we are going to get through this and that we're going to repair relationships. So I'm hoping that you can be okay with that. So I don't know if she's going to be okay with that, because the way how she's acting towards him and her behavior overall is just again, I cannot stand how Chanel is acting in today's episode, and just recently she's just becoming too much now. But anyways, guys, this is today's episode recap. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to my channel. Comment below your thoughts on today's episode, and happy 4th. Hopefully you're enjoying it with your loved ones today. Try to stay cool in the heat. I will see you guys next week. Have a wonderful 4th weekend.